So Table Talk and Tumbleweeds, this is the name we ultimately decided on. And I think it's sort of fitting that we are beginning our first official episode, as opposed to the prequel, which we did over the summer, in which we want to talk a little bit about what is going to happen during the month of December, and that is the beginning of the church year, which is the season of Advent. And Advent happens because it's something that we share, because Lutherans, and to somewhat lesser extent UCC, and we can talk about that in a second, are both liturgical denominations.
We are.
And some people, you might have heard this, it's a liturgical church that includes Catholics, Episcopalians, and also to some extent Methodists and Presbyterians, and the UCC. But, and in fact, Eastern Orthodox, there's a lot of liturgical churches in the world. What does that term mean, Josh?
So liturgical has a number of numbers of meanings, but the one that we are most going to be focused on here is that things are done in rhythms. We do things not just once, but over and over, so that you can get it not just once and understand it, but into your heart, into your brain, in a way that this rhythm carries you through life.
And that rhythm expresses itself in several ways, both weekly,
Yep.
because we have a rhythm of worship.
So the rhythm of worship, we gather together, we first gather, we hear the word, we share a meal, and then we are sent out into the world to go and do.
Yeah, in our congregation, we set it up as, preparation for the word, response to the word, and then bearing the word into the world. And so that is, the kind of, the
It's
word.
a liturgical plot, let's say.
It's a liturgical plot, yeah. But it has deep historical roots.
Mm-hmm.
And again, almost all liturgical denominations they might put it in a little bit different order. They might put some aspects of it into different parts,
Sure.
right? I think you and I both start our worship preparing for the word is confession.
Yes.
Some places, some denominations put the confession somewhere else.
Yes. Usually right before communion if they're going to do confession.
Yes,
that sort of
yes.
thing.
Yeah.
I believe actually the Episcopalians here have done that.
Okay.
With their not cowboy church, but whatever, the
Campfire church.
Which felt very out of place to me.
Yeah.
But liturgically, it does make sense because the purpose is to do that. Leave your gift at the altar. Go and reconcile with your friends before you then go to the altar. And so that makes sense. But boy, it was strange to me in that moment because within our tradition, it is the first thing you do when you come in.
Actually, the UCC, sometimes they don't do a confession at all, which always felt strange to me. And again, this is probably because of my Lutheran background. And I think that's part of what makes us, when we talk about the rhythms of liturgy, we are used to the pattern of the church. And going even to a different liturgical denomination is a little bit like listening to a cover of a favorite song.
That's a
right?
good way to put it.
It's like, oh, I know this song, and later I might come to love this cover, but the first time you hear it, it's like, well, that's wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
And so the response to that then is, okay, is this still the same song or have they completely done something entirely different? And I think we find within those of us who work together, it's still the same song.
And it is the same song, but I think, yeah.
But it matters why we do it.
But a really good cover, it's the same song, but it's not. And I think that's where the analogy of talking about liturgy is important. Because liturgy is not just irrelevant. Liturgy is the way we embody our theology.
This is the way we teach theology, in fact.
And that little comment right there is what led to about 8 pages, which I took out of what I wanted to talk about today. And this is
because this is something to do later.
Yeah, because I think that the idea, when we talk about what we share as liturgical denominations and the importance of liturgy, the fact that we're all liturgical is something we share, but how we express our various theologies, our way of being in the world through our liturgy, I think is really interesting. And I don't think it's, again, it is. I sort of think about when I was in Germany and the first time I went to a Lutheran church, I knew exactly what was going on the entire time because they were following the standard liturgy.
Despite having no language.
Yeah, well, I had a little bit of German, but it really helped to know where we were.
Yeah.
Because then it helped me understand the German. And so in that sense, it's like listening to a perfect cover of a song just in a different language. But I think what happens when you go like to an Episcopal church or a Baptist church, because Baptists can sometimes be liturgical, or a Methodist church, it's a little bit like listening to Nina Simone's cover of House of the Rising Sun, which is so different, but oh my God, it's an amazing song, and you listen to it, and you don't want to say which version is correct. Like, I don't want to live in a world in which both of them don't exist.
Right.
Right. So I think that so having said that.
This will be a topic for later discussion. We'll set it in a box and we'll come back to it later.
Because I think it would be really fun to do a whole series on liturgy and what we are saying in the liturgy in our various denominations,
Yeah.
and to do it with Episcopalians and maybe some Presbyterians and bring some other people. But the fact that we have a set liturgy, that is, that we have a worship form that we share that is global.
Yeah.
It's ecumenical, that is, it spreads across congregation. This is something important that liturgical denominations share.
Because the non-liturgical denominations, you can go to any different one of those and you don't know what's going to happen until it happens.
Yeah, and there's a certain, it's a little bit more like jazz.
There's a spontaneity in this,
There's a spontaneity.
which, if that's what you're looking for in your worship service, makes good sense.
Yes.
But this rhythm of life, where every week we go to do the same thing in the same church, and then each season we do similar things, each year we do similar things,
Yes.
brings this sort of repeated systems across different scales.
It's like memorizing the Lord's Prayer. Just because, it's, when I used to play the piano quite regularly, we always said that you really only begin to learn music after you've memorized it.
Mm.
Because other than that, you're kind of like doing that, but when you memorize it, then it becomes part of your hands, then it becomes part of who you are, and I think liturgy is like that.
Yeah.
So anyway.
So we are these liturgical churches, which at least within a weekly
Yes.
system, we have a similar pattern of worship every time.
A rhythm.
We do similar, not similar, but depending on exactly what liturgical setting you're using, there are the same music sometimes and then different music sometimes.
Yep.
There's different readings each time, which we'll come back to. But then those things pack together into seasons.
Yes.
And so that builds up a church year.
Yeah. Well, before we get to the church here, let's say something about liturgy then.
I thought I was saying
I mean,
really
the
smart transition.
lectionary.
Okay.
Right? Because that is the other thing that we share.
So we do share the lectionary.
Yes. We have a cycle of readings. It's a 3-year cycle. And as you mentioned, in general, like next Sunday, every Christian around the world that is a liturgical denomination will be reading from the same texts.
And this week especially, well, so this next week when Advent begins,
Right.
Christian churches around the world will all be reading the same texts.
Right.
This coming year will be from Matthew.
Because each
so-
year has a different. One of the
Synoptic
synoptic gospels are the first 3 gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, which tell the story of Jesus in roughly the same order, using the same source text. John is a completely different animal, also telling the story of Jesus, but with a much more theological emphasis.
Yes. So the synoptics see together. That's what synoptic means.
Yes.
And so they are very similar. And so we do focus on each one of them because while they are similar, just as with different denominations, they are different.
Yes. Yes.
And so Matthew is going to spend his time focusing on what it means that Jesus is incarnate. You disagree?
Do you think that Matthew is the righteousness guy?
Yeah, Matthew is the righteousness guy. Matthew is the one where at the baptism of Jesus we must do this in this way to fulfill all righteousness. You're correct.
Matthew is the one who, Matthew is speaking most directly to a Jewish audience.
Yes.
And saying, look, you've got a choice to make. The old way is done. The old covenant is done. I'm not saying I agree. I'm just saying.
We're saying this is what Matthew says.
Matthew says, right? This is the big disagreement between Matthew and Paul, and that's also something we can bracket for later.
Yes.
But Matthew to me is the righteousness guy. Jesus over and over again in Matthew, I have come to fulfill this.
Yeah.
Right? And then the other thing is that you have heard it said the old way, but I say the new way.
And I think what
Did F. Kalin not teach you anything?
Well, what happens is that Ev Kalin definitely did not teach me anything because he was retired by the time. But more importantly, in my head, I think of the Synoptics and John in the artistic presentation, where they are the man with wings, the lion with wings, the cow with wings, the bull with wings, and the eagle, which always have wings. And so those are the 4 symbols of those 4. And that Matthew is the man with wings. It is not an angel.
I thought it was Mark that was the man.
No, it's Matthew.
Which one's Mark?
Mark is the lion.
The great lion of God? Okay.
And so Matthew is the man because Matthew cares about incarnation. That's why he begins with Matthew begins with
I thought Mark was the man because Mark is the most human Jesus.
Also true.
I'm going to Google this later, you know that.
Okay.
No, I think you're probably right. I just was like, no, I totally.
But you came at it from that theological language understanding, and I came at it from the art language,
Right.
art
Which,
history
yeah.
one, and I don't know why I did.
Yeah.
But I did. And so that's where I was going with it. But you are correct. It is righteousness that defines Matthew's Jesus. And so for this coming year in this lectionary, righteousness is going to be the main topic that Matthew says, this is what I want you to pay attention to.
Right.
What does it mean to fulfill the law in this new way, to become something that is new in the world?
Mm-hmm.
A people who are built around faith and love and kindness and the resident alien, as opposed to the world of Pharaoh's Egypt, the world of Rome,
Yeah.
the world of Babylon.
So we just finished, so we're in year A, which is Matthew.
Yep.
And we just finished Luke. So I think it would probably be helpful then to maybe spend a couple of weeks talking about the themes of Matthew, perhaps during Easter, because the first part of the liturgical calendar, or the lectionary, kind of really emphasizes common themes with a different emphasis, right? So we're gonna do Advent, then Christmas season, then Epiphany season, and then we're gonna go into Lent. And all of those, and then we start, after Lent, we go into Pentecost, and Pentecost then is typically in the lectionary, the life of Jesus. It tends to, there's options in the lectionary, but it tends to tell the stories of Jesus. This year will be Matthew, next year Mark, and then the year after that will be Luke again. So it might be helpful to talk a little bit about Matthew, and I think that Matthew is actually one of the most, other than John, the most theologically complex gospel. So I can't wait to spend some time on that.
Yeah.
So that's the other cycle, the other rhythm that liturgical denominations share, which is the fact that we share this rhythm of readings.
Yeah.
And
So there's the weekly, we do the same things each week. There's the yearly, we go through this entire cycle each year. And then there's the seasons inside of that year, which also have that same rhythm to them. So we have Advent first, then Christmas, then Epiphany, then Lent, then Pentecost, and then we do it all over again. Come
Yes.
back to Advent every time.
but with a little variation, because we're using slightly different readings, except for some things you have to read John because he's the only one that talks about it.
Or even Christmas. So Luke is the only one that talks about Christmas.
I know.
So but there are certain limitations.
And if you know Charlie Brown, you know Luke.
You do.
Now, I mean, obviously, I think that there are some values to following the liturgical cycle, and one of them is that, we talked about this as story, right? You are following the salvation story every single year. It's not just sort of whatever the preacher feels like this time.
And you don't end up on that treadmill of the same 6 ones that you do
Yeah.
every 6 weeks.
I think it also helps to have the texts push back against what's just now.
Yeah.
Because I think when you're preaching from current events, then you're letting current events push you. It also keeps you from avoiding texts.
I don't like that one. I'm not going to read that one. We're going to skip that one.
Yeah.
Which has happened.
Yeah. Although I am constantly amazed, and I don't know if this is just because of sort of contextual sort of stuff, that it's like, the liturgy speaks to us. The lectionary speaks to us, sometimes in surprising ways. And I think if we have an idea and we go searching in the text for a response to that idea, we tend to find the response that we want. And when you follow a lectionary,
you may get a response that is not what you were expecting,
yeah,
but is still a powerful, theological, faithful response to a thing that maybe you would not have expected.
Yeah. So I think there's some value to liturgy, to the lectionary, but I think that and maybe saying this as someone who's now UCC, it's like every once in a while, no, there's something else we should talk about this Sunday, and it's not in the lectionary, or it might be in the lectionary, or
just not this
you're
week.
bending the lectionary a little bit too much. So I think that there is a value to stepping outside of it.
There can be.
Although I almost never do. I can't. Mostly, I think that the lectionary is value for those of us who just can't decide. It's like, there's so many Bibles. The Bible is so big.
It's
How can I
overwhelming.
decide? It's overwhelming. I only have to choose between 4 texts, and so that is much.
Yeah.
So we share a common worship structure. We share a common lectionary, and what we've talked about is we share a common church cycle, a common yearly cycle that happens every year. And we've already talked about this a couple times, but Advent, Christmas, Epiphany, and we can talk about these various seasons as we come along.